Good morning. It's Monday and I'm on my way to school. We don't have school today. It's a teacher in service, so we have work, but we don't have students today. And today's focus is a training on cultural proficiency, which I'm really looking forward to, but I plan on talking more about it after it's done, talking about it with you guys after it's done. But I am looking forward to it. We are having a speaker that I've heard good things about, so I'm looking forward to that. As far as the weekend, it started off pretty well. Saturday I worked out, got some, like a little bit of schoolwork done, finished watching Cheer on Netflix, edited video for you guys and all that kind of stuff. And then Sunday was off to a great start and went and worked out, got all my groceries, and started making my lunches for the week, and took a shower. And as I was getting dressed, I got out of the shower and my phone was just like blowing up, like just going off. And I said out loud, like, man, my phone is blowing up. And it was me getting text messages from Liza and my family members about Kobe Bryant. And I, of course, like anyone, my gut instinct was to just think like this is one of those pranks, or it's being misreported, or he wasn't on the plane. Like, I really spent a lot of time just saying like this isn't true, like even though like the news was coming out. And honestly, that really just threw my whole day off. I am surprised as to how much his death and the death of his daughter affected me as an individual. Yes, I was born and raised in Southern California. My family have been Laker fans since I can remember, from the days of Magic Johnson and Kareem, and then on to later teams, and then the whole Kobe and Shaq era and all of that. And so that has been a part of the teams that my family follows religiously. And I was really in the thick of it during the Kobe and Shaq time, but then I got into teaching, got really busy, and then I would just catch games here or there, like very sporadically, very randomly. If somebody was over and a game was on and they were watching it, I was watching it, but I wasn't someone that knew all the games and saw all the games. Not because I wasn't a fan, but I just didn't make the time to figure that out. But I always was a fan of Kobe's, and I think the reason why it affects me so much is because when I was talking to Liza about it over text, it is because I feel like I grew up with him. Like, him and I are the same age, and I remember everything from when he first came out to like hearing about this kid that was going straight from high school to the NBA, him going to the prom with Brandy and that being a big thing, because at the time I had my hair braided and people would tell me, oh, you look just like Brandy. And then hearing about him meeting this girl on this video shoot named Vanessa, and them getting married, and just like all of that, in addition to just him playing basketball. And I think that's what it is. So I feel like I've lost like a family friend or a family member, to be a little bit more dramatic, but more like a family friend. And so that's one thing. And then just the fact that he was just so young and his daughter was with him. And you know, like people that have passed in the past, like Michael Jackson or Prince or Whitney Houston, while I was sad and just devastated by it, it was different because I wasn't necessarily surprised when it happened. Like Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, we know that they had issues with substance issues and things like that. And Prince, not that I thought he had substance issues, but he was a musician, and we know that oftentimes musicians and artists like that are struggling with things, and they just seem to be more susceptible to things like that. But for this was a complete and utter shock. This man is young, he is healthy, he is very clearly driven to maintain health and be at the top of his game, and like, it's just not something I would have expected. I fully expected to see him well into his old age, and I think that's part of what gets me. And the fact that I just know from my brother just what he meant to kids. Like, this was my brother's idol, and to know that my brother has now lost his idol just hurts me for him. And just the night before, I was listening to LeBron talk about him and how honored he was, and all of that. And so that news just really threw my whole day off. Like, I literally was in my room just like speechless, not knowing what to say, not having the words to say. And so even now I'm just like sad about it. So that's just kind of how my weekend ended, and I wish I could say more, but I do have to stop talking because I am at work now. But so I'm wearing gold and my purple band today, like in honor of him and the Lakers. So but after school today, I will be sure to share the training and my reflections on that. So I will talk to you guys then. All right, it is now 3:37 to be exact, and I am leaving my school, leaving from the training. The training actually ended really about an hour or so ago. But I had some things that I wanted to make sure I had done for tomorrow. I needed to make copies of some social studies tests that I'm giving on Wednesday that I thought I was giving tomorrow, which is why I made the copies already. And I don't have my prep period tomorrow because we'll be having a PLC meeting. But all in all, the training was great. It was a training that was put on by a person named Dr. Shiraki Holly, who works in cultural proficiency training and culturally responsive type trainings. And my understanding is that he presented to our administrators over the summer. They loved him and they brought him on board to kind of take charge of today, which was great. I liked it. Honestly, in the past, I've always liked all these trainings because I just think anytime we have the opportunity to talk about this topic in education, it's valuable and it's important, but I know not everybody agrees. And I've been in environments and situations where, you know, people in teaching and even people that I work with in the broader sense of the district just make it clear that they don't think these trainings are valuable or necessary, or they're beating a dead horse, or whatever the case may be, which is always obviously upsetting to me as a teacher. But what I liked, one of the things I liked about this training is that he prefaced everything by saying, look, this is really a training at the base level. This is really all about treating people with human decency, and like, it's a training on human decency. And yes, there's elements of culture and race and ethnicity involved, but if you really just think about it like that, like we're really just focusing on human decency, like what person here would have an issue with that? And if you're still a person that has an issue with that, that's a whole other set of issues. So he brought a lot of good information and did so in a way that I felt was engaging to the audience. He was very funny, very humorous. I work in a very conservative district, and he used like bad words every now and then, and everybody was just like, oh! But in a way it was like disarming, like it made a serious topic more approachable. So time flew by. I just, as a teacher and as a teacher of color, I just want to take this opportunity to employ anyone that gets really like caught up in their feelings at these kinds of trainings, or starts to feel defensive, or starts to feel like the training's purpose is to point the finger at you or you or you and call you a racist or you a racist. That's not really the case. Like, I really do believe, like, if you come in with an open mind and an open heart, no one's really talking about you and, you know, what your beliefs are in terms of race. Now, if you are feeling a certain kind of way about it, I would say maybe ask yourself, why are you feeling that way? Like, is there something that you're doing that has caused you to question whether or not that's what's being told to you? And if it is, then that's something that you need to reflect on and work on. But if you know that what you're doing is coming from the heart and you have no ill intent when you're interacting with kids from different backgrounds, then really just go to these meetings with an open mind, because it's really just going to make everybody a better educator, regardless of who you are and what you are in your background. Because when I try and think about interacting with my students, I really do try and think about it like that. Like, I'm just trying to make sure I'm treating this person like a human and making them feel good about themselves. And that, I think, has helped with things like my classroom management, or my interactions with students, or my ability to deal with the student that maybe another teacher has had a very difficult time with, because I just try and remind myself of that all the time. Like, even in the moments where that student is really working a nerve and really upsetting me, they're still a human and they still deserve to be treated like a human. And I try really hard to make them recognize and feel that that is the way that I'm trying to treat them. So I have nothing but positive things to say about that training. And I hope that some of the naysayers and the skeptics that I know exist, and we're sitting in that room, that they came out feeling differently about the whole thing. And then I'm just gonna stop right there. So bottom line, I thought the training was great. I think all teachers need to just always be checking themselves and making sure, how can we be better? How can we engage students of all backgrounds? How can we be more understanding as teachers? How can we make sure we're not making a student feel unwelcomed or undervalued in our classroom? And just let those thoughts guide you. So I'm on my way home now, which is quite nice to be getting home this early. I do have some work that I need to do, some YouTube stuff, and I'm supposed to be I'm supposed to be making chicken wings today, like frying chicken wings in this little fryer, but I don't know if I have all the materials to do that. And I forgot that my mom wasn't going to be in the neighborhood today, because what I was going to do is have my mom mix the flour up for me, because I don't know how to do that. But she's not here, and I don't have vegetable oil. And then there's a part of me that's like, do I go to the store to buy vegetable oil and a couple other things that I need just for the purposes of frying these few chicken wings, and then I have these materials and these ingredients that I wouldn't use otherwise? Or do I just find something inexpensive to buy myself for dinner? And I haven't come up with an answer to that question yet, but I'm leaning towards just getting myself something for dinner, because I don't even know what I'm doing when it comes to frying chicken wings, which, shame on me, because my mom fries them all the time and I should have taken the time to learn, and I don't have all the things that I need. So more than likely I'll be buying something to eat. So that is it. That's my Monday for today, and tomorrow I'll check in with you guys. So see you tomorrow. Hello everybody, it is Tuesday at about 5:15. I'm actually at home in my office. I thought I would be able to kind of check in after school today, but I was wrong, because I had to be at another middle school in my district at 3:15, because that was the location of our town hall meeting, which is, and the purpose of the town hall meeting is to share the tentative agreement of the contract negotiations we did with the rest of the teachers in the district, and kind of like explain the major points so they can take it back to their sites and get everybody ready to vote, which I think we're going to try and do next week. So I had to leave at 3:15. As far as the teaching day is concerned, pretty low-key normal day. For social studies, they just played a Kahoot game to review for their chapter 3 test in social studies, which will be tomorrow. And luckily, one of the teachers at one of the middle schools in the district was nice enough to make all of these resources, so I didn't have to make it. The kids always seem to enjoy playing that game together as a group. And then tomorrow I will probably allow them to play it again as an individual right before the test. So we did that in social studies. We went over the article of the week for the week. This week we're focusing on the impeachment of Donald Trump. So we read through the article, watched the vocabulary video, got that all squared away, and then we discussed chapter 9 of Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and then we read chapter 10. In my switch class, we actually read 10 and 11, but then in my homeroom class, we only got through 10, because my homeroom class is still determined that that scene in Boy in the Striped Pajamas is a flashback. And if I can remember, I'm gonna read the section to you guys, and you guys can let me know what you think. So again, I mean, I have a couple students that are super persistent, and he was still convinced, so I said, okay, let's do this. And so after he read his text evidence to say it's still a flashback, at the end of it, I said, maybe the way you and I are defining a flashback is just different. So I said, for me, what I think in literary terms of a flashback to me is a character flashing back to a time that's not like directly related or currently happening in the story. So in this part of the story, the main character, Bruno, talks about what happened a week prior, and to me, I wouldn't really call that a flashback. Like, I just wouldn't. And he is, and the other students that agree, because there's a handful of them are like, that are still holding on to this. Sorry, my arm is hurting. The other students, the lighting's not good there. Let's try this. So the other students, along with him, think that qualifies as a flashback. So then they asked, well, let's look up the definition, which I did, and I wish I had it on my phone, but it said something like, describes a scene that does not take place in the main sequence of events of the story. So then I said, that's what I'm saying. Like, although this was a week ago that this character is talking about, it is still a part of the main sequence of events of the story. So I don't consider it a flashback. So I said, at the end of the day, the good news is we all know that this scene did not occur on the day of the rest of the events, and that it happened prior to that, but it just sounds like we don't necessarily agree what to call it. So I said at some point we might just have to agree to disagree, because we needed to actually read. So we read chapter 10. And he's like, but I just have one more point. I have one more point. And by this time the RS teacher came in, and it's kind of fun because it's like a handful of kids that are like so convinced of this versus me and the other teacher in the room. And we're allowing it to happen because I think it's healthy, and I think this is what happens at book clubs, and I don't have any issues with that. And it doesn't interrupt their overall understanding of the story. And it kind of reinforces some of the skills you want them to have when engaging with text. So I said, if we have time after reading chapter 10, I will give you the space to do that. We didn't have time, honestly, but then after school he came up again with this text evidence. But the text evidence that he's now using is from a chapter we haven't even read yet, because he's read ahead. And so I just told him we'll have to look at it tomorrow. So that was the big to-do in language arts with my homeroom class. And then the day ended, and then I chatted with my teammate for a minute, headed over to the town hall meeting, got back here at about 5, just picked up my clothes for tomorrow. And now I'm about to get on a Zoom call because I am a trip leader for book back tours, and we're going to be going to South Africa, or I'm going to be going. They have several different trips, but I'm leading the trip to South Africa, which is in June or July. You would think I would have that memorized, but I don't. So I'm going on a Zoom call with the other trip leader, who is someone that I met when I went to Finland last summer, and the two people, like the lead people for the company book back tours. So we're getting ready to have this Zoom call, and then I'm gonna eat dinner. I thought I was gonna cook a Blue Apron meal, but I am very tired. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna eat one of my lunches, because I have an extra one prepared since we didn't have like a traditional day yesterday, and one of my colleagues treated me to nachos. So I had nachos again, and which means I didn't eat my lunch, so I have an extra one to spare. So that was how my day went. Nothing too revolutionary or exciting, but I still wanted to share. So I will be sure to check in with you guys tomorrow. Hello everybody, it's Wednesday. It's about 4:30ish. I'm getting ready to go home, and there is something that I forgot to show you guys last week that I'm going to show you guys. And for those of you that feel like you know me, or you do know me, or have picked up on my personality traits, you're gonna feel my pain when I show this to you. So take a look. Okay. You see this right here? See that? That is broken. That happened last Friday during my switch class, which is in the afternoon. And I'm not exactly sure, I'm not 100% sure how that happened, but I can hypothesize, as I told my students, that someone had their hand in that mailbox slot and for some reason had their full body weight on it and broke that. And when I realized that happened, I had to really take a few deep cleansing breaths so that I could maintain my composure and a proper tone of voice when I communicated my feelings to my students. And I basically said, I've had these things for a few years now, and third graders have dealt with them, and that never happened with a third grader. And just reiterated to them that everything that they see in this classroom, almost with the exception of the desk and the chairs and the board and the ceiling and the doors and the windows, I have spent my own money paying for. And so I said that this mailbox situation is not something the school provided, so it's not even like I can take that to the office and say, hey, this is broken, can you fix it? And I said, and for this to happen, that's just a lack of respect to a certain degree and paying attention to what you're doing, because they were literally lined up along the counter turning in papers when that happened. And so I just made it clear that I was very upset about it. I stayed calm with my tone, but I feel like I got my point across. Like, it just, that kind of stuff really, like, it just gets to me because that's my money. And I don't like things to not be perfect or broken. So that happened on Friday. I'm getting over it. I'm getting better. But every time I see it, I just like flinch a little. And what's hard about it is it's not like I can pull that little piece out and then turn it around so that I don't have to see the broken part. I would have to take the whole back off of it, off the unit itself to do that. And that's not something that I'm willing to do. And then someone suggested that I tape it. And well, then I would just be staring at the tape the whole time. So right now I'm just gonna leave it the way that it is because I can almost not see it if I like look at it a certain way. But that happened. The other thing that happened today, which was, it was a challenge, but I did it. I had a student yesterday that was still, I think I talked about this yesterday, just persisting that that initial part of the boy in the striped pajamas that we've been talking about was in fact a flashback. And because he was just so insistent and persistent about it, I said, you know what, let me do my due diligence and let me go in there and like reference some things. And we read chapter 11 today, and chapter 11 is absolutely positively a flashback because it starts off by saying like several months ago. And so after that chapter, I can't remember exactly what it was that was said in that chapter or how it was worded, but it prompted me to like look back at certain parts of the book. And so I went back a few chapters and read the little passages that they gave me as evidence as to why it really was a flashback. And then I really thought it through, and then I had to admit, I told my class, I said, it turns out those students were right. It is in fact a flashback. And so they were celebrating. They really got a kick out of it. And I said, are you guys celebrating the fact that you're right or the fact that I'm wrong? And so they were laughing. No, we're not celebrating that. Then they said, we should be able to pull a stick out for that. So they got to pull a stick out of their kerplunk jar for doing that. And then the student who kind of like kept on with it and wouldn't let it go, he's like, well, at the end of the day, Miss Robinson, this debate really forced us to keep looking at the text and look at it really closely so that we can cite text evidence, which is really what you want. So at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation. And I really couldn't argue with that. It was a good point. So I was wrong. I was totally wrong. So that happened. And then in social studies, they just took their chapter 3 test. They played Kahoot yesterday, and then they played the same game today, but this time, instead of playing as a team, they played as an individual to check themselves. And I don't know, guys. They insisted that I give them their study guide when we start a new chapter, and that was going to be the key to them doing better on their social studies test. And based on some of the answers they were giving on the Kahoot, and from what I saw, I'm not sure if that's the case, but you know me, I made it clear like, hey, I'm expecting everybody to get an A or a B because this is what you said you needed for me, and I have done that for you. You had the study guide for about a month. And if you don't get a good grade on this test, now we don't really have any excuses besides maybe we just need to study a little bit more. So they took their social studies test today, and that was really all we got through in both classes. We read chapter 11 of Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and then they had a social studies test. So, I don't know about you guys, just in general, like this week has been, it's not rough, but I just keep waking up with like a headache and just feeling like anxious about like work. And I don't know if it's stress related. This is not even particularly the most stressful time of my school year thus far, and probably won't be. So I'm not sure what that's about. But when I get here, things get better, but I feel like a little discombobulated this week. I don't feel as like with it or as like, I don't know, aware of what every step I'm about to make is. So that gives me anxiety. And then tomorrow I have a professional development provider for our district, or an instructional coach is what I think a lot of you refer to them as in your district, coming tomorrow with some induction teachers just to kind of see how I run my classroom. So I was trying to make sure I knew for sure how I wanted things to go when they came, because what we don't want to do is show them disorder and chaos. That would be a bad example. And it's just hard because they're going to come in during social studies, And right now in chapter 4, we just finished chapter 3, and chapter 4 focuses on the Constitution. And this first lesson in this chapter is super duper long and dry and tedious. And when I look at it, yes, I don't know, like the subheadings are like to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility. So I just want to find a way to condense this all down to something that's a little bit more manageable and a little less dry. So right now my thought is I really just want them to understand the major principles of the Constitution, which is laid out in this little graphic. I don't want to break it now. In this little graphic right here. So we're going to read a portion, just that section of this lesson, and I don't think I'm gonna read the rest. But then, because they also start going into the Bill of Rights, there are a couple of paid teachers activities that I have found, thanks to my colleague, that focus on the Bill of Rights, and I think I'm gonna do something like that at some point, either Friday or next week, probably next week, because Fridays always seem to get ahead of me or get away from me. So, I don't know. You know, do you have those weeks when you just feel like, do I know what I'm doing? Like, who am I? What am I? Where am I? What am I teaching? How do I want to teach it? Stuff like that. That's where I'm at. So, that being said, I'm getting ready to go home and figure that out. And wake up for another day tomorrow. So, hello. There we go. Everybody, it's Friday. It's 4:45. I am shutting my computer down and getting ready to leave. However, I am having to take all this home right here. That is a basket of grading, and there's the rest of my stuff. I'm a little bitter that I'm taking some work home, but I'm gonna try and get as much of it as I can get done tonight, and make it so that I don't have to do much more than that over the weekend. I also need to explain that my hair is this way because it was Peace and Love Day at school today. So this is my version of like a hippie. I didn't vlog yesterday because I didn't have time during the day, and I really wanted to because yesterday was a day that some of the other teachers in the district that are going through induction walk through to kind of just observe a portion of a lesson that I did. And then after school, I was trying to figure out how I wanted this social studies lesson to go. And then I also helped one of my colleagues here. He is in charge of AFL, which is like a leadership group for men, and they have this oratorical competition coming up. And so they needed some people to like give some constructive feedback to students who are trying to participate in that competition. Excuse me. So he asked me to do that, and then I agreed to, and then I'm not really sure what I was doing beyond that. But I went home. I had all the intentions of the world, or in the world, I should say, of working. And then I just got home and I just was really tired. Like, I really think I'm getting sick. I have this cough that I can't get rid of, and I've just felt very run down lately. So when I got home, by the time I took a shower and got my clothes pulled out for the next day, which is today, and ate dinner, I didn't even cook a meal. I had a bagel sandwich for dinner because it got to be that bad. Oh, and then I went, after work, I went and got not a pedicure, but like a polish change on my feet because I needed to wear my Birkenstocks today and my feet were jacked up. So I got my toenails painted at least. And then I just was tired and I was in a mood, if I were to be honest, and so I just wasn't camera ready. But yesterday, as much as I wanted to share, I didn't. But yesterday is when the induction teachers came in, and they came in. I was teaching a social studies lesson, but they only got to see a portion of it. And I felt good about it. I felt like they came in and left feeling like they had seen a thing or two that they could take back to their classroom or ideas. I talked to a couple of them, and they asked me some questions about some of the things that I do in my classroom in terms of management and how I was doing this particular lesson in social studies. They seemed really enthusiastic. And then they happened to notice that I had these framed magazine features that I was fortunate enough to be a part of, and then they were really excited about that. So that was kind of funny because I forget that those are there and I don't really think about it. So when someone sees it for the first time and reacts, I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen. So it went well. I felt good about it. I felt good about the pacing of the lesson, so I have no complaints there. Today was Peace and Love Day, like I said, which is something that leadership put on because it was Bully Prevention Week, and I thought having like a Peace and Love Day would tie into that. And we tried a new thing where we want kids to participate in these spirit days. So they got a raffle ticket at their lunchtime if they were dressed. And then the winner from each grade level got to go up to the office and get a little gift card to a place of their choosing. So it went smoothly. I think we'll do that going forward with spirit days. And then as far as teaching and lessons today, I have been having the hardest time in social studies. We've started chapter 4, and I think I mentioned this in another clip earlier. And the first lesson of chapter 4 is just going into all this detail about the Constitution, and it's super, super boring. So I scaled it down, and in fact, that's what they saw yesterday is like me scaling down a piece of that lesson and just making sure they understood the purpose of the Constitution. And within that little snippet that I read, they reference or show really just a diagram of the Bill of Rights. And so today I wanted to go in more detail about what the Bill of Rights are, because there are some activities that I've seen that I would like to do with my class, but I felt like before doing that, they had to have an understanding of what the Bill of Rights are and what each of the first 10 amendments is covering. So it literally took me until about 7:30 this morning to figure out what I wanted to do. And sure enough, I found a video on vocabulary. So I was just gonna show the video, which was super short, but then I just checked to see if they had any resources I could use that were free, because I don't have the version of the account where you have access to all the resources. And they did, and what they had was this that breaks down each of the 10 amendments, like it gives you the actual wording, and then it just explains it in just basic terms. Now, this was not my best teaching because this could have been made more engaging with some kind of Kagan structure or something along those lines. But because it took me so long to even figure out how to condense this down to something that I felt was going to be useful to the students, I didn't have time to figure out, okay, now what layer can I add onto it to make it more interactive or engaging? But surprisingly enough, they were really engaged by just reading through this. So we read through it together. I had them annotate it and told them off to the side where they've like designated space for notes. I want you to note down what the amendment is covering or protecting in your own words. And I said, you're gonna wanna hold on to this because we're gonna do some activities in the coming days, and you need to have a certain level of familiarity with the amendments to be able to participate and be successful with the activities. So they were engaged just because they had all these questions like about pleading the fifth and the right to bear arms, and I told them, you guys are growing up in such an interesting time where quite a few of these amendments are being called into question just with the politics of today and the things that are happening in the news and in the world. So they were really, you know, into it. So I got lucky there, because really, had they not been engaged by just the subject matter, this would have been a really dry and boring lesson that, had I been observed, the person would have been like, you need to be better, Latanya. So we did that in social studies. And I thought I was gonna have time to have them make a little cootie catcher, which I honestly didn't know that these were called cootie catchers. I don't think when I was growing up I ever called them anything in particular. I know my teammate said, oh, she's known them as fortune tellers, but over the years I've learned that people call these cootie catchers. So this is a cootie catcher about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And so eventually I'd like them to be able to use these to just kind of review their knowledge of the different Bill of Rights and parts of the Constitution, but we didn't get around to making this, and I got this off of Teachers Pay Teachers. But next week we're gonna do some other things with it. So that was social studies, and then we are on chapter 13 of Boy in the Striped Pajamas. We are still using the product from Read It, Write It, Learn It, and as they're deciding where we're at on the plot map, they know that we're still in the rising action, but we're getting very close to the climax. So if you've read this book, we're at the part where Bruno has met Shmuel, and they've talked, and they're meeting at the fence every day, and Bruno's starting to to just have this awareness that there's something odd about the treatment of the people in the striped pajamas, or the Jews at the concentration camp, and the soldiers, and how, and anyone that's not at the concentration camp really, and how the two different groups are treated. So the class continues to be really into that book. And then we reflected on our article of the week, and they had to take an AR test today. And that was really it. So I contemplated calling in this morning because I don't feel 100% and I'm really tired. But I couldn't really call in because it was the first Spirit Day that we were handling the way that we handled it. And I had no sub plans made, and I wasn't prepared to have a sub. A part of me wants to take Monday off because I really just feel like I need a mental health day. But I doubt that I will, because I've already been out a lot just with other stuff. So this week, I don't know, this week has been weird. Like, I've felt kind of clouded in my thought process and things like that. And waking up every day with just like a headache and just feeling anxious and overwhelmed, that has been persistent all week. But I've kind of muscled through every day, and by the time I get to work and get into the swing of things, things tend to be okay. But I definitely want next week to feel, I want to feel more like I'm in control of the week, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, so that is all that I have to share, I think, in this week's vlog. If you found it helpful, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you have not. If you are not following me on Instagram, please make sure you do that. I am now only about 700 followers away from the swipe up link, which will allow me to add or link my videos directly on Instagram. Excuse me. There's that cough. And my Teachers Pay Teachers products and other things that I want to share with you guys that, you know, are just things that I find valuable. So what I'm saying is, if you haven't followed me on Instagram, please follow me there. But aside from that, I hope everything is well as always, and I will be sure to see you guys in the very next vlog. So until then, have a great day. Talk to you later, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye.